let's unpack talking about some of the benefits, less known benefits of a ketogenic low carb lifestyle. Now, I kind of was alluding to some of the gut piece because I got a question today, and I believe in taking inspired action. And it was asking, I'm worried about not getting enough fiber because I've heard fiber is absolutely critical for gut health. And if I'm eating a low carb diet, I'm not getting enough fiber. And so I thought it would be interesting because I was knee deep in the research, kind of looking at what goes on in the body in a low carb environment. And so I'm curious what your thoughts are. Do you get concerned about women or men going too low carb, not enough fiber? I know in the carnivore community, they think fiber is not necessary, not beneficial. I do see some of the benefits. I do think it helps with satiety and certainly with some hormones, but I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, definitely. In my experience working with women, especially, in a time before, during, and after menopause, that fiber is key. And it is, looking at the research, again, I will say men and women are different. Men have 10 times as much as testosterone than women do. They have 10 times more anabolic steroid hormones than women do. So we're going to, be more likely to go into a catabolic state or breakdown state and get more inflamed and out of balance than guys are. And so in working through my own journey and journey of, thousands and thousands of menopausal patients, adding in the alkalinizing, low carbohydrate, fiber rich foods. I mean, I don't believe in net carbs. That's number one. I'm not looking at net carbs, and especially with women, look at total carbs, stop this net carb stuff. I mean, that's not helping you. Mm-hmm. So looking at just how are we using food as medicine and these, high fiber, important nutrients that are part of establishing a healthy gut bacterial milieu, especially the estrobolome, to detoxify estrogen in a healthy way. And that is critical for brain health, for, fascial health, for muscle strength, and certainly for longevity. And the other big piece is in our keto community, constipation is a huge issue. Mm-hmm. And I definitely, hear the carnivore camp, and in Menopause, I have a 6-day carnivore nose to tail plan. Ben, you're going to love it, but it is, but the key thing is I want to prepare the GI tract. I want us to have, constipation is terrible for women. It's terrible for men, and, structure and function. So that piece of having healthy gut motility is critical for detoxification and hormone balance. And that's where, these dark green alkalinizing foods, herbs, and spices really play an important balancing role.
What are your thoughts, Ben and Thomas? Do you have any strong opinions on fiber? And Dr. Anna, I completely agree about the net carbs. I think that's how a lot of people skate through with keto junk food, paleo junk food, is that they don't fully acknowledge the full realm of carbohydrate consumption that they have. I think about Lily's dark chocolate is a good estimation. It's not a bad chocolate, but I have a lot of women that will say, oh, I only had 10 grams of carbs. I'm like, no, you really had 48. We need to be, and it's okay, but let's be fully transparent, because you're not just consuming 10 grams of carbohydrate. It's really closer to 50. And if that's the whole carbohydrate intake for the whole day, I'd rather that you get it from real food options as opposed to, I hate to say this, a bar of chocolate.
I'm a big fiber guy, always have been. And I catch a lot of flack in the keto community because I am a big fiber guy. And I think sometimes we have a carnivore influence that comes into the keto community a little aggressively and kind of denounces all the benefit of fiber. But you look at all the peer-reviewed research day in and day out, any kind of diet category, any region, any epidemiological study, it all comes back to fiber. And you look at the blue zone diets, carbohydrate rich or not, fiber is the main common denominator between that. Can't say it's the fundamental rule, can't say that it's the reason that everyone's going to live X amount of time longer. But when you look at the epidemiological data and you look at geographies and you look at the amount of fiber they consume, regardless of carbohydrate content, that seems to be the common denominator. So I'm going to go out on a limb and typically say that vegetables are probably good for you. And when it comes down to the fiber content, I totally agree. And it's one of those things where 2 years ago, I was preaching this and was just catching flack, right? I was like almost ousted because it's just like, oh no, net carbs, they make it so easy. No, it makes it more complicated. Make it easy. Stop worrying about it. Because there's another piece with fiber that we have to consider as far as net carbohydrates are concerned. And we all know obviously the soluble, insoluble piece, but I encourage people to consider this for a minute. With soluble fiber, the actual physical size of roughage that you get from soluble fiber is significantly more, as it's obviously going to, by law of osmolarity, draw water in. So when we have that, you're getting more potential GI benefit from a significantly less amount of carbohydrate risk, if that makes sense. Because you can have 3, 4, 5 grams of soluble fiber, and that's going to retain however X amount of water, which could equate to an actual 40 or 50 grams of literal roughage by the time it swells with water. So soluble fiber and insoluble fiber aren't necessarily created equal. And then we also have to look at how fiber, being a fermentable demonstrable, how that's broken down within our gut. And if there's anything that we learned over the past decade in microbiome research, is exceptionally different. And there's a huge degree of bioindividuality and a huge discrepancy between my bacteria, your bacteria, Bob's bacteria, Ben's bacteria. It just doesn't matter. So how we metabolize fibers, or don't metabolize fibers, is hugely bioindividual. So that means that perhaps we are getting some effect from a carbohydrate or from a fiber that we wouldn't think we are. The bottom line is that we just don't know enough to be able to say that it's going to count towards your blood glucose or not. We do know that it can attenuate your glucose levels, so yes, that's a fair thing. If you look at net carbs and you look at the amount of fiber and you look at how many carbohydrates you're taking in, the attenuation of blood glucose is certainly something that I think we can lean on and with almost certainty say that is going to be the case. But I mean, that's the same kind of thing for if you're going to eat a low glycemic carbohydrate, it doesn't mean that it's low carbohydrate. That's different. So if you're doing a low carb ketogenic diet and you eat something that's a 40 on the glycemic index scale and you eat 200 grams of it, you're probably not going to be in ketosis, albeit I will say it's a better carbohydrate, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be in a low carb state. Long and the short of it is everything that comes down to, various disease states and what have you, it still seems like fiber is the common piece. Now, I will say, before I turn it over to Ben, is that we have huge shifts in the microbiome depending on what we eat. And I want to make sure that I make a note that people that do carnivore, they put themselves in a state where they are having literally zero fiber, at which case there's a pretty massive adaptation that occurs with the microbiome to adjust for that. Okay, maybe there's less diversity, but there's different strains of bacteria that are doing the job. So with that is a very unique situation. And there is a very, 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 very fine line, but a very bold line at the same time between having zero fiber and having low fiber. You're almost better to go zero fiber if you can't get enough fiber, because a small amount of fiber is almost going to be worse than no amount of fiber, because at least with no amount of fiber, your body is triggering adaptations to occur. But if you're sitting in that, that's where I see people constipated and have issues, is they're sitting in that like 8 to 10 grams of fiber, amount per day, like just enough to kind of disregard the carnivore adaptation that would occur, but allowing for basically not enough fiber to actually do its job. I hope that makes sense. I just exercise caution. It's like go one way or the other, pick a lane.
I think that's really important because we know that the standard American diet, as one example, is a very low fiber, low residue diet. And for so many reasons beyond just the processed hyperpalatability of the diet itself, I think you bring about a really good point that you're better off, either consuming fiber, not consuming fiber, but this kind of standard American diet can definitely wreck or adversely impact the gut microbiome. Ben, what would you add to Thomas's thoughts? I can see you look like you're deep in thought right now.
Yeah, well, Thomas pretty much covered all the bases there. That was a great explanation. And you too, Anna. I'm a big fan of green leafy vegetables and getting fiber. I feel really good with them. With that being said, I also feel great when I do carnivore short term. And that's because of the adaptation like Thomas was referring to. It's a hormetic stressor to my gut. Things are changing. My microbiome needs to adapt and it gets stronger. It's kind of like survival of the fittest. So I see carnivore as a great tool in that aspect. And I throw in carnivore 30 days here, 60 days there, and I feel great. And then I'll go back to my green leafy vegetables. So whenever I teach keto, I'm always teaching it with the aspect of get in your green leafy vegetables, right? The alkaline keto, the green keto way that you teach, Anna. And I know that you're a big fan of it too, Cynthia. You talk about it in your book that I got a copy of, amazing book. So there is a place and there's a lot of science behind it. It could help with satiety, which is a big thing, especially as you're making the transition from sugar burner to fat burner. If you get the fiber up, focus on protein, fat, and fiber, it helps people stay satiated, and it prevents them from overeating and dwelling on what their next snack is going to be. So then they could practice intermittent fasting. So it leads to a whole host of other benefits. So I see the role in it, but I love that we're having this sort of conversation, because I know that all of us could relate to that. We don't agree on everything. We agree on most things, but we have so many people in our space that are saying it's only carnivore and that's it. It's only keto and that's it. It's only high protein, low protein. And to those watching on the webinar and those following our videos and our work, it could become so confusing to them. And I think the overall message is to find out what works for your unique biochemical needs. What is working for you? And if it's working for you to have 40 grams of fiber, you feel really great, your lab work is improving, that's great for you. For somebody else, you might need to do more carnivore, work on the autoimmune disease, and that could be great for you too. But the goal is to find the information from quality people that you know, like, and trust, and then synthesize that information by applying it, and then you find the magical formula. So I love having conversations with four of us, because we could get our research and our experience and what we put our clients and patients through, share it, and then others could do the same experiment and find what works best for them.